after just 3 years.
I've fallen in love with someone else. Let's break up.
Until then, I had been completely oblivious to her affair. Indeed, our conversations had dwindled recently. She often came home late, claiming overtime, and on weekends she found reasons to be away from home. I thought maybe that was just how marriage settles down after 3 years. I never imagined her heart had drifted so far from me.
I put up with this countryside for 3 years. You should be grateful. You were all about your job, just job, you know? And never interested in me.
She said with a displeased look. Whether I tried to discuss, deny, or apologize, her decision to divorce didn't change. Eventually, I signed the divorce papers as she demanded. Within a few days, Melanie packed her belongings and left with her new lover to her parents' home out of state. After she left, I stayed alone in the same house. My life became a cycle of work and home. The days just passed. The town where I was assigned after we got married is a quaint countryside area. Not heavily populated, the relationships with the locals were close-knit. Melanie never seemed to enjoy the rural life, and she didn't make close friends after we moved here. Yet, our divorce spread quickly, and I became known as the man who was dumped by his wife. People, both from the neighborhood and my workplace, looked at me with pity. Some directly asked,
"That must have been tough, are you okay?"
or inquisitively.
Is it true your wife ran off with another man?
Honestly, the divorce hit me hard. I felt a gaping hole in my chest and longed to talk to someone. But in this small town, everything spreads fast. I didn't want that, so I kept to myself. To avoid sinking into despair, I threw myself into work even more than before. It seems my workaholic nature partly caused the loneliness Melanie felt. I had mistakenly thought that being diligent at work would make her happy. Now, all I had was my job. I was engrossed in my work, tuning out even the concerns of those around me. Then, about 6 months later, a new colleague joined our company. Her name was Susan Jackson, transferred from our New York headquarters. According to my boss, she is 36, 3 years my senior. She is with top sales performance at the headquarters and touted as a future department head. She was assigned to our branch for a year to boost its performance. With her understated yet tasteful makeup, she dressed in elegant suits, exuded the aura of a sophisticated city woman. From day one, she efficiently reviewed our work, identifying current issues and future objectives. She was all business, with clear, concise instructions. She worked silently and diligently, efficiently completing her tasks one after another without any idle chatter. She was the epitome of a capable woman, which was incredibly cool. Yet, when asking for our help, she'd say,
"Excuse me, do you have a moment?"
with a humble, gentle smile. Despite her competence, she wasn't unapproachable, and everyone at the branch was charmed by the contrast. Everyone admired and wanted to talk to her. She always finished her work on time, leaving with a cheerful,
"Good job, everyone."
and swiftly headed home. The female co-workers wondered.
She always leaves so quickly. Maybe she has a boyfriend waiting at home. Is she married?
There was a buzz of curiosity about her, but nobody seemed to get close to her. Seeing her, I envied her ability to live life so smoothly. Since Susan came from the city, no one here knows her past. I'd like to live without people knowing my past, not worrying about others' opinions. I've started to think that, in this town, everything becomes known quickly. I had resigned myself to that fact because it's a small town. But seeing Susan's behavior, I've started to wonder if moving to a city like hers would clear up my worries. Also, I thought about joining the headquarters to improve my skills, inspired by someone as high caliber as her. So, I seriously started discussing a transfer to our New York headquarters with my boss. Then one day, a welcome party for Susan was planned. We all left work on time and headed to a nearby bar. That day, Susan didn't rush home at her usual time but joined us for dinner. As the party started, everyone eagerly bombarded her with questions. What kind of work did she do at the headquarters? When did she become the top salesperson? What's her secret? She answered each question meticulously. After a while, the questions shifted to her personal life. Was she married? Did she have a boyfriend? Just as she was about to answer these more personal questions, her phone rang.
Excuse me for a moment.
She stepped outside to take the call. The questioning paused and the room fell silent. Then, a drunk coworker, Edward, started pestering me.
Is it true your wife cheated on you?
Suddenly, all eyes were on me. It's over and done with. I tried to deflect, but the inebriated coworker relentlessly prodded.
Did you get any compensation? Did you hire a lawyer?
No one else intervened, seemingly curious themselves. I didn't want to remember any of it. Frustration built up in me, and I was about to snap. Then,
Sorry for stepping out. I'm back now.
Susan announced with a smile, sitting down between Edward and me. Then she resumed with a smile,
We were in the middle of questions, weren't we?
and began talking about her personal life. She revealed she was divorced. She had a daughter at 20, now in high school. She got pregnant while in college, took a break to have her daughter, and divorced at 30 due to her ex-husband's infidelity. She shared all that.
My daughter lives with my parents in New York. That call was from her.
Ended with sweetly smile. She then lightened the mood with more cheerful topics, and neither my story nor hers came up again. I was relieved and deeply grateful to her. Her strength in openly discussing her situation also struck a chord with me. The next day, I caught up with her as she was leaving work on time. Susan, I really appreciated what you did last night. Thank you. I called out to her. She stopped and turned with her usual graceful smile.
I should be thanking you for the wonderful welcome party.
She responded with her usual graceful and gentle smile, but sensing my feelings weren't fully conveyed, I anxiously continued speaking. No, I mean, you heard the questions I was getting from Edward, right? Stepping in and diverting the attention from me really helped. I find it really tough to talk in detail about my divorce, I said, scratching my head awkwardly, and she nodded understandingly.
I get it. It's hard to put into words when the divorce is still fresh. The pain is normal.
As she answered, gently gazing distantly, I asked hesitantly. Because of me, everyone ended up learning about your past. Are you okay with that? I was concerned she might have reluctantly taken my place, not wanting to share her own story. I was really worried that she had put herself out there as a substitute for me. Sensing my inner turmoil, she showed an even gentler smile, as if understanding my concerns.
Time has healed my wounds. You'll be okay, too. Time resolves these things.
She reassured me. She waved
See you tomorrow.
lightly and walked away, leaving me feeling almost dreamy as I watched her go. From then on, we began to chat during breaks at work and sometimes after work. Susan talked to her daughter every day at 6 p.m., explaining why she never stayed late. Sharing her secret made me feel a ticklish sense of camaraderie. She spent her weekends in New York with her daughter.
My daughter, Catherine, loves baking. She's always made something for me to try when I visit. It's something I really look forward to.
Susan would say with a tender, almost melting smile, and watching her became a daily highlight for me. Eager to talk more with her, I started working more efficiently to leave work on time, just like her. Until 6 p.m., when she would call her daughter, we'd chat outside the office. To ensure our time together, I worked harder and harder. But that wasn't like right after my divorce when I was trying to forget something. Making an effort to create time to talk with Susan, even when tired, felt somehow gratifying and pleasant. It was a bitterly cold Friday in February. By then, our post-work chats had become a daily routine. With the onset of colder weather, we had taken to talking in a cafe after work instead of outside. It was almost 6 p.m. Once the time passed, we would have 2 days off starting tomorrow. We wouldn't see each other for 2 days as she usually went to New York every weekend.
I want to talk more. I want to spend more time with her.
Unable to contain my feelings, I blurted out. I wish I could go with you tomorrow.
Sorry?
She looked surprised realizing what I'd said. I covered my mouth, but it was too late. Seeing my flustered and red face, she chuckled softly.
Sure, you can come. I'd like you to meet my daughter too.
Shocked yet elated at her consent, I mentally did a victory dance. The next day, Susan and I boarded the plane together, heading to her hometown in New York. Although I'd been there a few times, its bustling crowd always overwhelmed me. And I was incredibly nervous. Her daughter and parents were at her house. I wondered if it was okay for a guy like me to just show up. I just hoped not to leave a bad impression. Nervously, I entered her house. Her daughter, looking a lot like her, and her kind-looking parents warmly welcomed me. I was ushered into the living room and exchanged greetings with everyone.
We've heard how kind you've been to Susan since her transfer. Thank you.
Her parents said with their appreciation. Flustered, I talked about the town where we worked and her accomplishments at the company. Time flew by, and it was almost time for my flight back. Although Susan was supposed to stay overnight, she kindly took me to the airport with her daughter. As we neared the departure gate, her daughter Catherine silently handed me a paper bag.
Oh, thank you. Is this for me?
She looked up shyly and whispered.
I heard it's almost your birthday, so I made you some chocolates. I'm good at making sweets. Thank you for making my mom happy.
Hearing that, Susan turned red to the ears and panicked, who is usually composed.
You made this just for me?
Yes. I wanted to give chocolates to my mom's favorite person.
Catherine replied playfully, dodging Susan's attempt to cover her mouth and sticking out her tongue. Their interaction was heartwarming, and I felt incredibly happy.
Thank you. Receiving chocolates from the daughter of someone I like makes me the luckiest man.
I replied sincerely, a bit shyly, and Catherine covered her face with her hands, squealing.
Wow.
Susan and I exchanged smiles, both blushing at her cute reaction. The following Monday of that weekend, I followed Susan after work as usual. Thanks for Saturday. The chocolates were delicious. Turning to my voice, Susan appeared a bit bashful, and she pulled a neatly wrapped small package from her bag.
Do you know what day it is today?
I nodded enthusiastically, taking the package carefully. Of course, I knew. It was my actual birthday, and I'd been restless all day.
Thank you. I'm so happy. Can I join you at your parents' place again?
She looked at me seriously.
Be prepared, it's going to be tough. My parents and Catherine seem to like you. They said to bring you again. I bet they'll want you every week.
Her smile betraying her embarrassment, and I felt enveloped in happiness again. Just today, my boss hinted that my request to transfer to New York might soon be granted. My recent hard work had been recognized. Susan's assignment here would end in a few months. If my transfer goes through, it would surely bring us closer. Even if it doesn't, I plan to visit her family every weekend by plane, and if needed, I'm willing to change jobs. When my ex-wife Melanie told me that I wasn't interested in her, I didn't quite understand, but meeting Susan, I believe for the first time I truly learned to love someone. While I don't regret divorcing her, I've reflected a lot. I'm determined to build a happy home with Susan, the precious person I've finally found. No matter how hard it is, the thought of this effort fills me with an invigorating sense of purpose. My name is Jack, I'm 26 years old. 2 years ago, I married my middle school classmate, Alice. We don't have any children yet. Both of us love kids and had hoped to start a family soon after getting married. However, it didn't happen as planned. About a year into our marriage, she started having abdominal pains. Medical tests revealed she had a condition with her ovaries, making it difficult for her to conceive. When we learned that, she was incredibly hard on herself, feeling guilty and crying every day. As our friends started having babies, she lost her usual cheerfulness.
I don't mind if we don't have kids, as long as we're happy together.
I kept telling her, trying to be supportive. Although Alice had slipped into a depression, she gradually began to recover her spirit as we traveled and enjoyed good food together. I've never thought about leaving her just for the sake of having children, and I made sure she knew that. As we spent more time together, I felt we became closer than before. Our relatives and friends would sometimes ask about us having kids, but she would just smile and say,
"We're happy just the two of us."
I was confident we could keep doing well together. One weekend, Alice planned a trip with her best friend from middle school, Mary. I knew Mary from back then too. She married a local guy around the same time we did. Like us, they didn't have children either. The four of us, being childless couples, had a lot in common and occasionally dined out together.
"Okay, I'm off."
Alice said one Saturday morning, leaving cheerfully with her travel bag too. She was going on a trip with Mary.
Take care.
I replied, seeing her off at the door and pondering how to spend my solo weekend. Seizing the opportunity, I called some friends and met up at a familiar bar that evening. A lot of them were still single, so it was easy to gather them on short notice. We were reminiscing when one friend announced,
"We've got a surprise guest coming soon."
Just then, a woman entered our private room.
Long time no see.
She greeted with a smile. The moment I saw her face, my buzz faded. It was Mary.
"I bumped into Mary near the office this afternoon. She said she was free today, so I invited her."
I'm usually with my husband, but he's on a business trip today.
Seeing them chat, I was at a loss.
Wasn't she supposed to be on a trip with Alice?
That thought raced through my mind.
Oh, Jack? Isn't Alice with you? I was looking forward to seeing her. We haven't been in touch much lately.
She said, looking disappointed. I lied on the spot.
Oh, she's on a trip with a friend today.
Lately, Alice often went out at night, saying she was meeting Mary. I don't remember much of what happened after that. Returning home alone, my mind was a mess, and I could hardly sleep. Why did she lie? I had a bad feeling about it. Sunday night, she returned as cheerful as when she left, unpacking and showing me souvenirs. Staring blankly at her, I finally asked,
"Who did you go on the trip with?"
Unaware that I had met Mary, she casually replied.
"Huh? I was with Mary, didn't I tell you?"
Her response made me feel sad.
Saturday night. I met Mary. She said she hadn't been in touch with you recently though.
Hearing that, her face turned pale as the blood drained from it.
"Oh, that's because,
She started to say something but then suddenly burst into cry. And she confessed that she had been unfaithful. As she spoke, I felt more emptiness than anger, as if it was all happening to someone else. She kept apologizing without revealing who her affair was with.
I need some time to think,
I said and went into my room, locking the door behind me. Alone, The shock of being betrayed hit me hard. What was our marriage all about then? I felt like my heart was tearing apart. After that, Alice and I stopped talking completely, avoiding even eye contact as we lived side by side. Should I divorce her, or forgive her? I couldn't decide. But a few days later, something decisive happened. My best friend, Leon, told me he had seen her walking arm in arm with another man. Leon knew about her infidelity, so he had rushed to tell me.
She's still cheating even after being caught.
That moment, any feelings I had for her completely disappeared. 3 months after her affair came to light, we got divorced. Disgusted at the thought of any further involvement, I didn't even ask for compensation. Post-divorce, I couldn't stand living in the same area as her and moved out of state for a new job. Settling into a new place and job kept me so busy that, before I knew it, 6 months had passed. Keeping busy meant I didn't have to think about unnecessary things, and I hardly remembered her anymore. Then, one weekend, someone moved into the house next to mine. As I was leaving for some shopping after the move-in seemed done, I heard a familiar voice behind me.
Jack.
Huh? Mary? I turned around to see her, frozen in place with a large bag in her hand.
I just moved in today.
Wow, what a coincidence. Well, I got divorced.
Standing in front of the door, I briefly explained to her why I was there. Tears welled up in her eyes. In a panic, I invited her into my house to talk more comfortably.
The person she was cheating with was my ex-husband,
Mary revealed. I almost spit out my coffee. Alice had never told me who it was, so I had no idea. I was speechless to learn it was Mary's husband, Alice's close friend.
I couldn't believe it when I heard you two got divorced. Then a few months later, my husband brought it up. We ended up getting divorced too.
Mary looked indescribably sad as she shared her story.
I see. You've had a hard time too, Mary.
My words seemed to release some of her tension, and she started crying.
It was shocking enough that my husband was cheating, but the fact that it was her. I was so surprised.
She kept crying, as if releasing all the pent-up emotions she had been holding in. I had almost moved on from the past in the 6 months since my divorce, but for Mary, it was still recent. Remembering how I felt right after my divorce, I understood her pain all too well. All I could do was listen silently as she continued to cry. She has always been the type of person who would be called as leader, and there was never a weak image of her. That means, it must have been extremely painful even for her.
Sorry about that,
she said after a while, as she suddenly stood up, covering her teary eyes with her hand, and hurried out of the room. Left alone, I felt a surge of irritation towards Alice and Mary's ex-husband.
Why do the ones cheated on have to suffer this much?
I wondered aimlessly. That day ended without much happening, and the next day, feeling listless, I lounged around, wondering what to do for dinner. Then the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found Mary standing there, holding something in her hands.
Sorry for showing you such an ugly side of me yesterday.
As an apology, she handed me some Tupperware filled with side dishes.
You've always been so conscientious,
I said with a laugh, and she chuckled shyly.
Let me treat you to some drinks as a thank you,
I suggested, and we ate the food she brought, drinking together. As the alcohol loosened our tongues, she shared more about her ex-husband's affair. He had started going on more business trips about a year ago, coming home late at night. It all coincided with the time he was involved with Alice, which made sense to me. Mary mentioned she had moved out of state because it was too hard to stay in our hometown. Thanks to our mutual venting, her expression brightened significantly. Since then, we started having regular meals together at each other's homes. After my divorce from Alice, I thought I was done with marriage. However, my time with Mary felt surprisingly comfortable, and about 6 months after reuniting, I asked her out. She was surprised but accepted, saying she'd be happy to be with me. Both of us had been through tough experiences, so we were hesitant about marriage. I think she felt the same way. I shared my feelings honestly with her.
I want to spend my life with you, Mary. But, honestly, I'm scared.
Holding my tensely clenched hand, she gently laid her hand on mine.
I'm scared of being betrayed again too. But I feel like I can make it work with you, Jack.
Her response solidified my feelings. I would protect Mary, who trusted me, for the rest of our lives. A few days later, we got married. We didn't have a wedding, just a small celebration for the two of us. Surprisingly, our marriage was going smoothly, and a year later, we had a son. I cried more than Mary during the birth, and she teased me.
Pull yourself together.
Holding our little one for the first time was an unforgettable moment. Since then, we have been having a good time together as family of 3. One day, out of the blue, Mary's father contacted us and said he needed to talk, visiting our home. Although we regularly visited her parents, that was the first time he came to us, so I was nervous. As soon as her father entered our home, he took a deep breath and said,
Jack, please, I'm begging you, become my son-in-law and join our family business.
I was stunned by the sudden request and helped him up, asking him to raise his head. Mary's family owned a well-known local business. She was an only child, and her ex-husband had refused to join the family business. After her divorce, her father had almost given up on keeping the business in the family. However, with the birth of our son, he strongly wished for a successor. I gladly accepted the offer. I had known Mary's family were good people since we were kids, and as I wasn't the eldest son, my parents probably wouldn't object. When I conveyed my willingness to help, her father grabbed my hand and was overjoyed. However, there was one big concern. Taking over the family business meant we had to move back to our hometown. That meant, we might run into those two again. We shared this concern honestly with him. After a moment of silence, he said,
I understand, I'll take care of it,
and left for the day. Within 2 weeks, he called to inform us that Mary's ex-husband, Alice, who had remarried him, and their families had all decided to move out of state. It turned out that Mary's ex-husband and his relatives worked for a subcontractor under the company of Mary's father. In a small town with few job opportunities, that was not uncommon. The power of a large company was evident. A single word from the parent company could easily facilitate such a transfer. While it might seem harsh at first glance, I was deeply grateful to him for striving to protect our family so directly. He never forced anything on me as his son-in-law and successor, always respecting my wishes and moving things forward thoughtfully. He even prepared a splendid house for us, sparing no expense. The treatment at the company was excellent, allowing us to provide our son with everything he needed, including various extracurricular activities. Thanks to Mary's father, we never had to worry about money. However, I reminded myself daily not to take my current status for granted and to give back more than I received through my work. Knowing from experience how easily happiness can crumble, I never forgot that my family and Mary were the sources of my happiness. Now, our son has grown into a college student and is set to start training under me as a successor after he graduates next year. I told him he could choose his own path in life, but he said,
I love Grandpa, and if it makes him happy, I'm glad. And I respect you, Dad.
Choosing to become a successor of his own accord. On days when he doesn't have college classes, he comes to the company to observe the work. Although Mary's father has retired from active duty, He occasionally visits the company and watches his grandson with a contented smile. I don't know what became of Alice and Mary's ex-husband after that. I don't regret divorcing, but I also remember that not everything about my marriage to Alice was bad. We did have happy times, and it's because of that I was able to move forward and choose a life with someone I love again. People are weak and can make mistakes in a moment. But no matter what happens in the future, I want to cherish and never let go of my family's hand. I even hope that Alice, whom I once resented so much, is happy somewhere. The happy days spent with my family have healed me. It might sound naive, but I genuinely hope that everyone, including Alice, finds their own happiness.